Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community.
I've been married for 7 years to my 33-year-old wife, and we don't have children. 2 years back she began a new job and has excelled. Initially she mentioned a CO worker she disliked, calling him an a-hole. However, her attitude towards him softened over time, and she stopped talking about him much. I didn't see a reason to worry. Despite our imperfect marriage, I've always trusted her, and we generally got along well. Jump ahead, about a month ago I started noticing changes. She began texting more frequently, keeping her phone close at all times. Her evenings and weekends suddenly became busier. She grew distant and avoided any affection. Plus, she started lying about odd things. The final lie happened when she packed for a business trip, bringing a much more revealing swimsuit than she'd ever worn before. When I asked, she claimed she ordered it online untrue, and decided it wasn't suitable for a work trip to Florida. Yet, she took it along on the trip. While she was away, I chose to investigate. Throughout our entire relationship I'd never snooped through my wife's belongings, but I was fed up with the constant deceit. In her work bag, I discovered a caricature-like drawing of her on hotel paper. Alongside it was a post-it note with directions to her male CO worker's house, written in her handwriting. Reviewing our bank statements revealed numerous instances where she claimed to be at work, but was actually dining at various city restaurants. This prompted me to dig deep. As a professional private investigator, I have no qualms about intruding on privacy when faced with substantial suspicion. I legally placed a GPS tracker in her car, which is titled under my name in our state. Upon her return from the trip, she mentioned going to a coffee shop and running errands on a Sunday. Yet, her car didn't come close to a Chipotle. But she returned home carrying a Chipotle cup, confirming she'd eaten there. Then, on the following Tuesday, she said she was attending a company dinner and working late. The GPS data showed her leaving work at 3:20 p.m. and remaining at the restaurant until 9 p.m. The big problem happened the next Saturday. We were supposed to watch my niece play tennis at 8:00 am. She said she wanted to drive alone so she could leave the tennis place and go work at a coffee shop after the game. She said she was going to X coffee shop and talked a bit about why she wanted to go there. I said have a good day and went to my car. Using the GPS, I saw she drove straight to a Comfort Inn motel. I got to the Comfort Inn and waited in a nearby parking lot until I could be sure she was inside, not in her car. I called her from the lobby and asked how X coffee shop was. She said it was good and asked why I wanted to know. I just said come down here so we can talk. When she came down, she said it's not what you think. He has to do this because he's been caught with other girls before. I asked what she meant and she said he always works in hotel rooms. She said they didn't do anything physical and that's when I told her to get out of my car. I left and she called me 50 times. I finally answered and said if she tells even one lie, I'm hanging up. She admitted they kissed once about 5 months ago but said it was a mistake and meant nothing. She kept saying they were just working. I asked how many times she met him in hotels and she said about 10 in the last 9 months. Then I asked what she did on that Tuesday and she got defensive. She said she was at work all day until a work dinner. I told her I thought she was lying and hung up. She came to our house while I was loading my stuff and my dog into my car. She stayed in the driveway, refusing to move until we talked. She was crying and saying sorry, really upset. That day I left and it's been a month. Since then we've met a few times for her to explain things, but when I ask my question she gets upset, defensive and says answering isn't good for us. She's lied about small things and when I call her out she says I'm trapping her. She's firm that it wasn't a romantic thing. She claimed they were just good friends and he was helping with her job. Their talks got inappropriate, discussing our problems. She confessed to texting him and deleting the texts, saying they weren't romantic but could be seen as flirting. She said he helped with her depression and work. I want to trust her, maybe because I love her or I'm scared of the truth. I'm stuck trying to find the truth, but even if I find it, I don't see how I can get past what I already know. Am I losing it? Update, we're a month post D-Day. I conversed with her last night. Here's the scoop, I inquired about her chats with the man in the past 4 weeks. She mentioned he's clueless about my confrontation at the D-Day hotel. She hasn't discussed it with him, deeming it a marital issue unrelated to him. I asked about cutting off non-work talks with him. She claimed she's scaling back. That phrase set me off. She believes she must taper, instead of going no contact because he's unaware of me catching her. She then fibbed about a trivial detail. I called her out, utterly sure she was lying. She vehemently denied it, never yielding. I let it go, adding it to the heap of unresolved problems. After she claimed to be tapering off social talk with the other man, I stashed a voice recorder in my house and split. Last night, I checked the tape and found my wife and this man gabbed for well over an hour in at least 2 calls. The recording stopped in the afternoon, so I assumed they spoke more in the evening. I didn't catch many specifics, but I heard a few incriminating remarks. They discussed our marriage's status, something she claimed he knew nothing about. They chatted about using a secret phone app to avoid detection. She insulted me for arriving late for breakfast. They talked and chuckled about numerous topics. I haven't heard my wife that elated since we dated. I confronted her, she admitted to some, denied the rest. I'm beyond caring. I'm meeting a divorce lawyer this morning. Over the past fortnight, I've maintained no communication with my spouse. Recently, she reached out via text, seeking a conversation. I responded, stating my condition for discussion. She'd have to come clean about everything before I'd engage. She alleged awareness of a wiretap on her phone, which didn't exist, but I let her believe it and claimed I already knew all. I insisted on hearing the truth directly from her. Eventually, she relented, agreeing to sit down to divulge everything. When she visited, she confessed that her involvement with another man was indeed intimate, spanning the last 6 months. She admitted to booking a hotel room the day prior to our anniversary for their rendezvous. She also confirmed ongoing communication with him post-discovery, claiming he assisted her in managing my inquiries. She asserted that the affair had ended for good and expressed a desire to mend our marriage. This confession unfolded 6 painful weeks after I caught her in the hotel. I suspect her confession only emerged due to my persistence, although she contends she always intended to come clean, aiming to minimize the hurt for both of us. The damage accrued during those 6 weeks appears insurmountable. Update, we ended up divorcing. I took my time before making that decision, and in hindsight, I wish I hadn't waited as long. My ex-wife wanted to stay together, although her reasons were unclear to me. However, her continuous lies and gaslighting made reconciliation impossible. Going through the divorce has been the most challenging experience of my life. During my marriage, I was fully committed. I wasn't perfect, but I loved my wife wholeheartedly and envisioned a lifetime together. I was willing to do anything to make her happy, and I believe I made significant efforts on multiple occasions. Now that I've distanced myself from that relationship, I can see it for what it truly was, a narcissistic person draining the energy and goodness out of someone who cared. The marriage felt completely one-sided, with one person giving everything, and the other taking even more than could be given. Towards the end, I started believing I was a worthless partner. She undermined my profession, my personality, and my appearance. However, since the divorce, my business has thrived, and I've been able to date women I once thought were out of my league. I used to think I was unattractive, partly due to my ex-wife's influence, but now I've had gorgeous much younger women approach me in bars. I've had a few wonderful relationships with amazing women. These relationships ended amicably due to compatibility issues, but they helped me see how terrible of a partner my ex-wife truly was. I have no contact with my ex anymore, and I rarely think about her. The divorce became contentious because she thought I was receiving too much of the money, even though I accepted less than 50% to ensure a smoother process without disrupting businesses and retirements. It's astounding that she could cheat on someone and then complain about the amount of money they're taking even if it's less than half. This reinforced my belief that I made the right decision and needed to distance myself from this toxic situation as quickly as possible. I lost some friends during the divorce, but I'm not bothered by it. Most of them took my side, and I have no concern for those who didn't. They made it easy for me to let them go. The hardest part was losing my in-laws, as I genuinely cared about some of them. However, I understand their stance. I sent enough correspondence to my ex-wife's affair partner's wife to make it clear what had happened, and while she never responded, I respect her decision. For anyone going through this nightmare, here's some advice. Separate yourself from the situation to think clearly without being manipulated, seek professional help, surround yourself with friends and family, make healthy choices, stay active, limit substance use, and prioritize self-care. Listen to advice, but ultimately make your own decisions, because it's your life. There were incredibly dark days after discovering the affair, but after the initial heartache, this period has been the best time of my life. I find genuine happiness every day. If you're facing a similar situation and need advice from someone who's been through it, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive into story 2. Around a month ago, I discovered that both of my children were the results of affairs my soon-to-be ex-wife had. I had been harboring suspicions for a while that neither of them was biologically mine. 6 years ago, when my son was born, I experienced immense happiness. I had married my best friend, we had a child together, and everything seemed perfect. However, as he grew older, I started to have doubts about his parentage. He didn't resemble me, and the more he grew, the more apparent it became that he looked vastly different from what I would expect my child to look like. I didn't want to let mere appearances drive my suspicions, as I'm not a petty or paranoid person. It was my wife's behavior that raised alarm bells. Whenever she went out, her whereabouts didn't match her claims. She had unexplained gaps in her schedule, refused to let me interact with anyone from her workplace, and a close friend of hers accused her of flirting with their significant other at the time. The lies she spun started catching up with her, especially after our son's birth. Yet despite her deceitful nature, I still loved her, foolish as it may sound. Whenever one of her lies was exposed, she would assure me of her love for me. She had managed to convince me that despite her dishonesty and manipulation, she wasn't an unfaithful woman. Last year, she became pregnant again, and I clung to a glimmer of hope that the child might be mine. However, when our daughter was born, it was evident that she was multi-ethnic. I declined to sign the birth certificate, and the subsequent paternity test I requested confirmed my suspicions all along. Neither of them shared my biological connection. The day I received those test results was the day I initiated divorce proceedings against my unfaithful spouse and walked away from the family I had built. I understood that my departure would shatter her son's life as he witnessed me leaving. Despite my apprehensions, I had been the best father I could be to him, pouring all my love and effort into being the dad he deserved. However, now when I see him, I am overcome with repulsion. I am repulsed by my unfaithful wife, repulsed by my own lack of trust in my instincts, and repulsed that the last 6 years of my life have amounted to nothing. Multiple individuals have labeled me a monster for leaving my son in this manner. Since I moved out, my ex has repeatedly attempted to manipulate me into reconciling by using him as a bargaining chip. She has him call me at odd hours of the night, crying and pleading for his daddy to return. On the day I packed my belongings to move out, she paraded him into the room to demonstrate the damage I was causing. Both online and offline, every time he is mentioned, I am criticized and condemned. Despite the fact that I am not biologically related to the boy, I am his father. Regrettably, I have now come to realize that for most people my own feelings hold no significance. My parents are my sole supporters throughout this ordeal. All my own siblings brand me a reprehensible person for leaving a child in such a manner. My sense of betrayal and sorrow is disregarded because a child is involved. I understand it's not his fault. I know the man he called his father for his entire life just walked away, but why am I expected to man up? Why should I pretend everything is fine and suppress my contempt for this entire situation? Why should I set aside my own life and emotions? I never truly was the boy's father, even though I loved him as one and still do. However, I would come to resent and despise him if I were forced to continue playing that role. I would loathe myself for not standing up and reclaiming my own life. He is not my child, and although it's not his fault, he is no longer my responsibility. I suppose sharing my personal issues achieved something. Nonetheless, I've noticed a few common questions, so I'll address them here. 1. Her son is aware of the truth behind my departure. I had a conversation with him, explaining that I am not his biological father and that his mother deceived me and was unfaithful. I made it clear that I harbor no ill feelings towards him, that he bears no responsibility for this situation, and that I will continue to think highly of him. 2. Some have suggested that I never truly cared for him or that I was always searching for a way out. It's challenging to convey emotions in a text post like this, especially when overshadowed by strong animosity towards your unfaithful spouse. You're free to form your own opinions. 3. I have legal representation, and I won't be obligated to pay child support or alimony. Finally, for those suggesting that I should remain in her son's life and continue as his father, that's not realistically feasible. I don't hold any animosity towards him, but I've been deceived, lied to, and exploited by a selfish and deceitful individual who has now entangled her children in her web of lies. He is an innocent victim of her actions and bears no blame. However, it doesn't change the harsh reality we're confronted with. I don't hate him. I feel profound sadness when I think about his situation. Nevertheless, when I look at him, all I see is 6 years of deception, 6 years of being taken advantage of, and 6 long years of accumulated doubts and frustrations with a woman who used me. I can't simply set aside my resentment to try to be a part of his life because the life I lived with him was nothing more than a facade crafted by his mother. This is the harsh reality I must grapple with, and I cannot, in good conscience, subject myself or him to any more of it. I've noticed numerous armchair lawyers in the comments suggesting that this post is fake due to the reasons I mentioned earlier. I won't disclose my current state of residence, but I am currently in the process of legally challenging paternity, known as the disestablishment of paternity. This won't silence the 90% of you who think Google makes you legal experts, but at least I've made an effort. Edit: this will be my final edit before I move on from this little distraction I created for myself. Firstly, I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their kind words, whether in the comments, DMs, or chat. You've brightened my day, which hasn't happened in a while. I wish I could respond to each of you, but I can't thank you enough. Secondly, I've noticed many people vehemently criticizing the words I used to describe my soon-to-be ex. I want to clarify that I'm currently in one of the darkest periods of my life. All I feel is intense anger towards the woman who has devastated my life. Is the language I used inappropriate? Is the word I chose to describe her degrading and offensive? Yes, I'll admit that. But I won't apologize for it. What I've written here today reflects the harsh reality I'm facing right now. It's an unfiltered outpouring of emotions from a flawed man. I don't aim to make people hate women or convey a misogynistic message about women being terrible. That's not my goal here, and it's not the message of this post. I understand why people take issue with the word I used, and I accept that as valid criticism of my actions today. I came here today to find an outlet for the situation I'm in, to vent, grieve, and cope with the complex and intense emotions that have consumed me for the past month, a place where I can speak my mind freely. And you know what? I achieved that today. It was surprisingly good, thanks to all of you. Alright, here is a third story. We were previously together when we were both 22 right after college. Initially, I was more of a friend to her until I asked her out when we both ended up working in the same city. We dated for 9 months, and during that time, I believed she was the one for me. However, she suddenly became distant without any apparent reason. She never wanted anything serious back then, with thoughts of pursuing her master's degree in the USA. On the other hand, I wanted a serious relationship, but she viewed it as neediness and felt I should be grateful for the opportunity. She was quite popular in college and very attractive, which made me feel insecure because, at the time, I was working on building my own confidence and believed I was becoming a desirable partner. We stayed in touch due to mutual friends. From what I observed between the ages of 23 and 27, she dated various men. When she was 27 to 28, I heard that her parents attempted to set up an arranged marriage for her, but none of those prospects worked out. Eventually, she reached out to me, and one thing led to another, and we started dating. At the beginning, she asked me if I was seeking a serious relationship, and I told her I never dated without serious intentions. However, I also mentioned that I wasn't in a hurry to get married and suggested that if she felt pressured by her parents or any other reason to get married quickly, she should explore other options. We dated for 6 months, which were, honestly, some of the best months of my life. Our bed life was fantastic, and she was incredibly accommodating and sweet. She brought up the topic of marriage, but I expressed that I wasn't ready. Many of our friends had gone through divorces, which made me cautious. I wanted to be sure before taking such a big step. She accused me of lying about my intentions, but I showed her messages where I agreed to a serious relationship, just not one that was rushed. She argued that overall we had been dating for over a year, and that she was eager to settle down. After this conversation, things became distant between us. Despite sending her sweet goodnight texts, she sometimes didn't even respond, and she showed little interest in meeting. A month passed, and then she told me that I should either marry her or move on, claiming that she could easily find another guy and that I was fortunate to have her. This situation has been painful for me, reminiscent of past experiences. I consider myself a modest person, but I also believe I've become an attractive catch. Despite my fondness for her, I made it clear that I wouldn't be pressured into marriage, so we decided to end our relationship. After another month she started texting me again, and we rekindled our relationship. It's been 3 months now, and she has returned to being her sweet self. She admitted that she was wrong to claim she could easily find someone else, and said that I'm the right one for her. She expressed a desire for marriage as soon as I'm ready, and emphasized that her parents are urging her to get married, but she's willing to give me time. However, I feel overwhelmed by the idea of marriage at the moment and concerned about her ability to switch between being sweet and distant so abruptly. Is she being sweet just to persuade me to marry her? While I like her, I have a nagging feeling that this may not work well in the long run, and it seems like marriage is becoming more forced than natural. Update: the day after I posted my initial message, the thoughtful comments from people made me realize that I needed to end the relationship, a realization I probably should have reached without posting. Last Saturday was quite chaotic, and I'm really grateful for the advice I received. I decided to break up with her, and now I feel like it was the obvious choice. I called her in the morning and explained that I couldn't handle the abrupt shifts between being cold and distant. I also told her that she should find someone who aligns with her timeline, and I didn't want to be pressured into marriage. I expressed that it hurt me when she believed she was better than me and out of my league. I want someone who treats me as an equal. I mentioned that I wanted to end things on good terms and wished her well. Her response was anger. She accused me of never loving her and targeted some of my insecurities, which I prefer not to share even anonymously. The conversation became heated, and although I tried to calm her down and end things amicably, she was insistent that I had wasted her time and wasn't a real man, leading to a bitter ending. Then she sends me a text expressing her desire to end things on better terms. She suggests that she'll come over so we can have a productive conversation about our relationship. When I see her in person, she looks more attractive than ever. We decide to have an open exchange of criticism. I acknowledge her criticism about prioritizing work too much. I also share with her how her comment about being able to find someone better hurt me, emphasizing that such thoughts shouldn't be present in any relationship. She admits her mistake and proceeds to shower me with numerous compliments, saying that I'm the best guy she's ever dated. She asks if there's anything she can do to fix things, and I respond that this relationship is beyond repair, but I'm glad we didn't leave things on a sour note. I make it clear that Nothing will change my decision to end it. Surprisingly, she then tries to initiate an intimate encounter, something she had always rejected before considering it disgusting. I find it even more enjoyable than our previous lovemaking. Afterward, she suggests I take until the next day to decide if it's truly over and assures me she'll do whatever it takes to make amends. I firmly state that it's over, and I can't continue in a relationship where I have to threaten to end it to receive respect, love, and compromise. She starts crying and tells me that I've always been the one for her, the one she'd end up with. She reveals that some of her friends had shown interest in me over the years, but she kept it a secret because she wanted me in the end. Despite her persistent pleas for over an hour, I stand my ground, and eventually she accepts the reality and leaves. Later, I receive a screenshot from a friend of an Instagram story she posted for her close friends. I was part of that list earlier this week, but clearly not anymore. It's a special list in green where you only share content with a select group of followers. The story essentially criticizes me for wasting her time, among other things. I decide to send her a final message before blocking her. I express my hope that everything goes well in her life and that we can go our separate ways. I feel liberated and look forward to finding a woman who treats me with kindness and loves me for who I am. Alright, here is a fourth story. It all began as a typical Wednesday. I wrapped up my work and headed over to my girlfriend's place to hang out after dinner. We've been in a relationship for about a year and a half. When I arrived at her house, she explained that she had plans to meet up with her best friend and that they wanted to go to another girl's house, someone they've only met a few times, to have some drinks. I wasn't thrilled about going to this other girl's house and suggested that we just spend some time at her best friend's place and then head back home, since I had work in the morning. Besides, I find it more enjoyable to hang out with her best friend's boyfriend while they do their thing. So we went to her best friend's place, where I was supposed to pick her up to go to the other girl's house. However, when we got there, she suggested that we stay at her best friend's place, as I had originally proposed. I thought that was perfect and we hung out there for about an hour. I had a beer with her boyfriend because he offered it to me and I accepted to be polite. Generally, I try not to drink or do anything during the week, and if it were up to me, I'd be in bed by 11 p.m. Weekends are a different story when I'm not working. Anyways, the girls started taking vodka shots and were getting quite drunk. At this point, her friend mentioned wanting to leave and go somewhere else. I suggested that it was getting late and I wanted to head home soon, so we should stay put. She didn't argue, but this idea got stuck in my girlfriend's mind and now she was determined to go somewhere else. She called the girl whose house we were supposed to visit and told her we'd be coming over for a while. Initially, I said no, we shouldn't go there, and I needed to get to bed. It was nearly 11 p.m. by then. However, my girlfriend was insistent, so I foolishly decided to compromise. I said fine, we'll go, but only till 12 and then we're leaving. So we went to this place. And it was just as I expected, a shabby, messy apartment with nowhere to sit and a bunch of random people I'd rather not be associated with. It was nearing 11:30 at this point and I thought, okay, it's not too long, I'll tough it out. The girls were doing their own thing, socializing with these other girls and continuing to drink. They ended up finishing a bottle of vodka, and all these girls were getting very drunk. When 12 rolled around, I went to get my girlfriend and told her it was time to go. However, she pretty much ignored me and continued what she was doing, almost like a child who doesn't want to leave the playground. I kept reminding her every few minutes, saying, "It's time to go, let's go," but with no luck whatsoever. So here I am, trying to get these two drunk girls to leave this place so I can head home. That's when things start to take a strange turn. I'm not exactly sure how it began, but suddenly my girlfriend, her friend, and these two other girls all go into the bedroom and close the door. I overheard them mentioning something about a foursome. I'm standing outside the room in the living room with some other guys and we're all thinking what on earth is happening in there. I didn't want to just barge into the room to get my girlfriend, as this isn't my house, and I have no idea what these girls might be up to in there. I texted my girlfriend, but got no response. A few minutes passed and I could hear them talking to each other inside, so I wasn't too concerned at that point. At some moment one of the girls comes out of the room and I approach the door. I go in and get my girlfriend and express my discomfort about what's happening. This startled the other two girls and put an end to this supposed foursome. I tell my girlfriend once again, "Let's go." She agrees and asks me to leave the room so she and her friend can get dressed and then we'll leave. I wait for a few minutes, but they're still not out. I walk to the door, open it, and there she is, under the blankets on this not clean bed, receiving DJ from her best friend. I walk in saying something like, "That's gross, what are you doing?" Of course they immediately stop and at this point I'm trembling with shock. I tell her I'm leaving, put on my shoes and I'm just unsure about what to do. Eventually I decide, whatever, I'll bring these drunk idiots home. So I return and tell them to gather their stuff so we can leave this bizarre place. Her friend apologizes to me and I'm at a loss for words. I basically remain silent and drop her friend off before taking my girlfriend home. When we get home I try to talk with my girlfriend for a bit, but it's almost pointless as she's heavily intoxicated by this point. However, she realizes she did something wrong. Initially she tries to excuse herself, claiming that I don't give her enough attention and don't engage in a particular activity that she enjoys. We argue for a bit and I think I manage to get some points across and then we head to bed. The next day, I explain everything to her. She and her friend thought I'd be okay with it because they are both girls. She also mentioned it was her friend who initiated it and she sort of went along with it, finding it very strange. I explain that I'm upset and that it feels like she cheated on me. While I'd probably be more upset if it were another guy, it still doesn't sit well with me. Now she's feeling very guilty about it. After work, things are a bit awkward between us and she's acting quite differently from her usual self. I'm quite uncertain about how to handle this situation. I understand that it's considered cheating regardless of whether it's with a guy or a girl. I also realize that if I hadn't walked into that room, I might never have found out about this. I told my girlfriend that I understand she might have thought it was okay because it was another girl, but I'm very uncomfortable with it. I made it clear that if something like this were to happen again, I would end the relationship. Do you think I'm being too forgiving in this situation?
Thanks for listening. Share your opinion in comment section and also do like and subscribe to the channel.